kind of reflection. And then after the reflections, there will be questions from participants on the platform.
Okay.
But I was just welcoming you, and thanks for honoring the invite. But Prof. Bonani, she's here on the platform. She'll do the honorable thing as soon as we start.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Fenji.
Thank you, colleagues. Yes, it is a privilege of ours this afternoon. I think you are a minute to go. Thanks, Fenji. Good afternoon. Thank you. Joining my colleagues in thanking you for accepting this invitation. I hope the postdocs and the other students and young academics will be reminding each other to join the platform as we start. So welcome and thank you again. Colleagues, good afternoon and thanks for joining. As usual, it's a privilege that we have this platform where we come together and have conversations that matters to how we do our work. Today, this evening, I want to request you to join me in welcoming Dr. Fenji-Materechera-Mitochi, a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute for Water Research at Rhodes University. Her primary training is in geography and environmental science. She has broad interest in sustainability science, agricultural farming systems, food systems, governance in agricultural systems, and the application of systems analysis as a tool to solve complex problems. Her research work is focused on the land-water agricultural nexus in South Africa and is positioned at the farm scale. She has strength in applied qualitative research methods and community engagement. I was inspired listening to her at the sustainability sustainability science conference that we had recently. And it is our pleasure this afternoon to hear her story, her academic career story, her passion for engagement, and her passion to mobilize other young academics and in doing research work that matters. So with that, Fenji, Prof, colleagues have already taken you through how these conversations normally unfold. So we're going to then hand over to you. And once you are done, we will then start the conversations after Prof would have given a recap. So over to you, Dr. Fenji, and welcome. Welcome, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bonani, for such a warm and kind welcome to this platform. And let me also extend a warm welcome to everyone who has joined in. I am very excited and very grateful to be here and to be afforded an opportunity to share my experiences, but also to engage with like-minded individuals and have some constructive scholarly conversations. So I'm very, very delighted As has already been said, my name is Fenji-Materechera-Mitochi, and I am a postdoc fellow at the Institute for Water Research at Rhodes University. So the title of the presentation that I have prepared for today, I have chosen to entitle it Navigating Science Communication as an Early Career Researcher. And I will be drawing from reflections from an African sustainability science researcher, which in this instance, of course, is myself. So I will, if I get into the next slide, there we go. So I just want to give a brief outline of how I have structured my thoughts and my thinking around this subject matter, and to give you some signposts of the direction in which this conversation will go today. So what I did was take from the title itself and pull out key themes or subjects that in essence are the themes that I will be fleshing out today. So I said the subject is Navigating Science Communication and its reflections from a sustainability science researcher. So sustainability science becomes a central theme or subject to dwell on. And then I identify myself as an African sustainability science researcher. So I think it is important to spend some time to just think about the significance of the African context. I'll also be talking about science communication. The main kind of starting point is science communication, navigating this thing called science communication. So I'll be talking about that as well, what it is, how it is applied. And then as an early career researcher, I will be giving some references to opportunities that fellow early career researchers can explore towards this end of science communication, and then synthesize everything with some just general thoughts of how all of these subjects play into one another. And then throughout the presentation, because my title says Reflections from a Sustainability Science Researchers, I will be drawing from my own personal experiences, my journey thus far as an academic, and all of the examples that I will give or explore are based on me having just taken stock for where I am until thus far, and sharing my personal reflections from those experiences. So it's a very personalized, a very tailored to me presentation, and I hope we'll have a good time together at that. So I want to begin with sustainability science. And I say here, I am a sustainability science researcher. And it has taken me a considerably long time to arrive at that assertion, or to say that with confidence, because for a very long time along my journey in academia and in research, I have been confused as to where exactly do I position myself and how do I brand myself as a scientist. So throughout my journey in institutions of higher learning, I have always been in the science faculty, and then within the science faculty, different departments or schools. So right at the beginning, at my first postgraduate qualification, which was an honors degree, I was placed in the geography department. And geography, as many of us would know, it has so many, it is diverse. It has two broad sub-disciplines, being human geography and physical geography. And then within those sub-disciplines themselves, there are so many additional avenues through which we could explore these sub-disciplines. So my first and initial introduction to research concepts and research practice during my honors year was within a geography department and with colleagues who are trained in geography. But interestingly, the kind of research that I pursued at that level, I struggled to place it or tie it to one specific discipline. So I took an interest in issues around sustainable development challenges and how they present themselves in our local context, and issues that cut across human interactions and the environment. And so I came out of that qualification, and when somebody says, so what is it that you do, or what science is it that you do, I struggle to give a concrete answer. And then I proceeded to my master's studies and my master's research, and I fell into the same trend or the same approach to doing my research. The research problem or the research focus area lent itself to a problem that again cuts across both the biophysical and human and societal aspects. So I tackled issues around water resource use, or integrated water resource management, and the issues within that cut across. So I came out from my master's research still confused and still battling to place myself. And then I went a step further and further compounded my confusion. It got completely out of hand at PhD level, because now I was positioned at an institution within a school of animal, plant, and environmental sciences. And then my research that I did, or my research project at PhD level, was dealing with agricultural farming systems, and it leaned a lot towards the agricultural sciences. And the issues that I was trying to address or unpack there, once again, cut across both the human, the natural sciences, and the social sciences. And by the time I completed, unlike my peers whom you can be in a conversation with and say, so what did you obtain a PhD in? And they would very easily say, I am let's say, for example, hydrologist, or I am a climate scientist, or I am an ecologist, or maybe even more specific, a rangeland ecologist or a grassland ecologist. And I, when asked a similar question, would respond and say, well, I have a PhD in science. Let's start there and let's end it there. There's a long answer and there's a short answer. The short answer would be, I have a PhD in science. The long answer would be, I don't know exactly where that where that falls. Overall, this recurring theme or this golden thread through all the research that I'm interested in is cross-cutting, and it looks at the intersections or the interplays between these different systems, and it addresses problems, and it looks at problem solving or solutions to problems that also applies a lens that appreciates the complexity of the connectedness of the issues that we are trying to address. And for a long time, I didn't see a place where someone who thinks like that, I didn't see representation for someone who thinks like that, or a name, a label for a researcher who thinks like that, only until fairly recently, where I've come into contact with conversations around this notion of sustainability science as a discipline or a field of research in and of itself. And when I have been learning more about it, I'm coming to a realization and an appreciation that, that's me. I see myself. This makes more sense to how I see the world and how I view things. In a recent conversation with a colleague from Spain who recently moved from a research space into a community practice space, when having a conversation with her, and I was talking about my predicament with, where exactly do I place myself? And I explained why there is complexity around being able to place myself. She said, think of yourself as a knowledge broker. Think of yourself as a knowledge broker, because I listen to you and I see that you are a big picture thinker. You are one who connects the dots and one who sees where the connections are at, and you are interested in those connections. And you are very right to say there are not as many of you out there, because traditionally within the sciences, we are trained, in our respective disciplines, and our thinking becomes very tailored to that discipline, to that focus. And so even in our problem solving, we would tend to be, thinking in silos. But I really love this idea of sustainability science, and a definition, a common definition I'll borrow for the purpose of this presentation, is a field of research defined by the problem it seeks to address. It is solution-oriented and an integrated science. So it doesn't align itself or confine itself to one specific discipline, but it is integrative in its nature, and it is aligned to what the problems are, the problems that we are trying to address. So I now feel more confident and encouraged and comfortable in identifying myself as a sustainability science researcher. It has made my life so much easier. So I want to talk about some of the different frameworks for sustainability science, or entry points through which sustainability science is applied. And I've listed only 4 here. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but these are some of the more popular, more common frameworks that are used. So there's that of social ecological systems, CES, which looks at the interplay between society and ecological systems. There's also the framework of power and politics, and looks at the power dynamics and how these mediate access to resources. Another framework is nature-society interaction, very much similar to that raised in the first point. And this takes into account the diversity of knowledge systems that exist It gives an appreciation for diverse cultures, which also, incorporates issues of gender, issues of race, issues of age, and the rest, and their relationship with the environment. Another common framework is that of complex adaptive systems, which takes into consideration the complex nature of the interactions between systems that are related to the issues that we are trying to address. And still on the subject of sustainability science, here I'd like to look at some research foci within sustainability science and draw reflections from some examples from research that I have done or even are currently engaged in. So one of the research focus areas is that of governance. And this looks at institutions and structures, actors, power relations, and differentials. And an excellent example of how this is applied in research that I am involved in, I'm going to use the example of an ongoing project that I am part of a research team in currently, and it is one that is commissioned by the Water Research Commission of South Africa. And this project is looking at the concept of equity as it is embedded in South African policies around, water and land as well. And it is looking at the governance and the institutional arrangement around that are designed to accelerate equity. And as it is embedded in policy. And this speaks to the uniqueness of the South African context with the legacy of apartheid, where we see a lot of disparities and gross inequalities in resource allocation. And particularly in this case, we're looking at water. So the subject of water allocation reforms becomes an important one. And this project is looking at how are we achieving the goal of equity in water allocation reform and different, institutional measures and mechanisms that have been implemented to do this. One of those being joint venture partnerships, for example, which is strategic partnerships pairing commercial farmers with smallholder farmers. And through the study and through what we are investigating, we are exploring this subject of governance, the adequacy of governance arrangements to achieve certain goals and certain outcomes. Another research focus area in sustainability science is that of complexity and looking at feedback loops across scales, so cross-scale dynamics. And a great example that I can use to illustrate this, I will draw from my PhD research, which I mentioned in passing earlier, which was looking at farming systems in South Africa. And my study area was actually in the Limpopo province, specifically in the Vembe district of the Limpopo province. And again, drawing from the unique context of South Africa and South Africa's dichotomous agricultural economy. So you have commercial farmers, large-scale commercial farmers coexisting with smallholder farmers and mostly operating as independent entities. And what my PhD study was trying to investigate or assess was the level of connectivity and interaction between these two systems and the possibilities or the plausibility of pairing these systems or coupling these systems because of the nature of the interactions between them for the long-term food security of the country. So South Africa is a unique country because you have at a national level, a country that is deemed food secure, and the large-scale commercial farmers largely contribute to this food security status. But then at a household level, you have a country that is deemed food insecure. And smallholder farmers are significant contributors and facilitators of the household food security. So if both of them, both kinds of farmers are contributing to food security in one way or the other, how can we not explore the possibility of just pairing the two and they operate as a unified entity? So that was some of the things that I was looking at in my PhD study, and that brought to the floor the nature of the very complex nature of the interactions between these two systems and embedded in a unique country context. A third and very important research focus in sustainability science is that of transdisciplinarity. And transdisciplinarity is a way of organizing research when the subject that is studied is not only studied through the prism of one science, but many sciences. And the object goes not only beyond the scope of one discipline, but also beyond the scope of science itself. So it is the idea of incorporating diverse actors in the research process and in the production of knowledge and in the solution of problems that are not just strictly scientists and from a science background. So again, with the research that I have been largely engaged with until thus far in my career, I work with communities, farming communities. I work with farmers and associated actors within that sphere. So from the different sectors that have an impact on farming, these are the actors that become significant in the research that we try to conduct. So transdisciplinarity is key, and it leans to the idea of co-creation, co-evaluation, and evolutionary pathways of nature, society, interactions. So this is emerging from involving everyone in the process of arriving at solutions. So that's sustainability science. And then I said it is very crucial that we consider the importance of the African context. I am an African, proudly so, from Malawi. And one of the greatest loves of my life is this continent that we call home. It is one of my core values, and an appreciation for the diversity that the continent presents is one of my core values just as a person, even before I am a researcher. And it is so necessary for us to consider how we are applying sustainability science, or if we want to regard ourselves as sustainability science research practitioners, we need to be conscious of how this applies in an African context. I very recently as last week, was presenting at a seminar, the findings of preliminary findings for the study that I mentioned earlier that deals with equity and water. And I presented to a diverse audience of academics, but from different disciplines. And during the question and answer session, there was a colleague from the social sciences who raised an important question in response to the presentation. And they said, they're talking about this concept of equity and how it is being applied here in a South African context. But can you tell me, the originators of this, this school of thought, or those from your engaging with the literature and the discourse around equity, who would you say are the ones who are at the forefront of this discourse around equity based on the literature? Where are they from? And my response to that was, these are largely individuals from a Western, European, industrialized, rich, democratic societies. And a follow-up question to that was, how then can you take that concept and then seek to apply it to address a problem in an African context? And I found that a very pertinent question, because if you think just even from a practical sense, how if this concept is originated in a Western setting or a global North setting where you have by numbers a white majority and a Black minority, it becomes quite complex to then take that and apply that to an African context where you have the converse of a Black majority and a white minority. And it's finer details, finer technical, practical details like that, which make you begin to open your mind to the importance of context. Another question that was brought up from the same conversation after the presentation was, is there a term or a phrase for this concept of equity in any one of our indigenous languages, which which can then be understood in a manner that brings it closer to home? Do you know of a term in any indigenous language that encapsulates the ideals and the dimensions of this concept of equity? To which the response was no. And that further then asked the question of, how can we even begin to apply this kind of research and to say that we are applying this as an analytical lens for the problem we're trying to solve, if at a foundational level there are differences in understanding and we are not taking into account the importance of context. So that's one example, just to illustrate the importance of the African context. Another one I will use is Uganda. I've said here an example of farming systems in South Africa and Uganda. Recently this year, I spent 3 months in Uganda as a visiting scholar at Makerere University. And I was looking into research, trying to draw comparisons, comparing and contrasting the farming systems in that country compared to those which I'm more familiar with in this country of South Africa. And it was very fascinating to see the stark differences and the contrast in issues arising, and it made me begin to think that the approaches that would then be used to addressing the problems would have to differ. So, for example, you have land. The land issue and the land subject is highly controversial in the South African context, again, because of the history and the legacy of apartheid. So use land for agricultural use is the pathway to land for agricultural use. Before you can even get there, it's not a straight line. There are issues of land tenure, the land access that are very, very complex. very politically laden. You even engaging in the research itself, you have to exercise caution just by virtue of the nature of how controversial the subject is. And so in terms of priorities in addressing the research, you would mark or you would flag this issue of land in a South African context and mark it as significant before you proceed. Whereas in Uganda, the issues of land tenure are less complicated than they are in a South African context. Another one is access to water. We know South Africa is a water scarce a country, and so water scarcity is a significant issue in when we're coming to conversations around water for agricultural use. And that's somehow different from context of Uganda, where they have Lake Victoria, they have the Nile River, and a lot of rainfall in a subtropical, area or a subtropical climate. So their issues with water are very different from those in a South African context. And so how they will engage with all the different factors of production and what are their country priorities in a Ugandan context will be different from those in a South African context. So this is just to highlight the importance of the African context. Now I'd like to delve into the subject of science communication, which is at the heart of what I said in my title. It's navigating science communication. And for a working definition for this presentation, I will use this one by Jensen, which is science communication is the practice of informing, raising awareness of science-related topics, and also getting involved with audiences that include, at least in part, people from outside the science community. And until thus far in my academic journey, I have seen the importance and the necessity for science communication, particularly because, as I mentioned earlier, I engage a lot with communities. And when we speak of the transdisciplinarity as being a key component of sustainability science practice, engaging diverse actors in the research process, traditionally, those trained in the sciences, the trend is mostly that you would see the need to communicate your science at the tail end of the research. So when you have come to some findings from the research that you're doing and you want to now disseminate that research to the people who it impacts, that's when now the subject of science communication brings up. And now we're concerned with how are we going to communicate these findings effectively. However, transdisciplinarity itself much rather requires or highlights the importance of incorporating the diverse actors at every part of the research process. So right from the very onset, when you are identifying what the problem is, and you are presenting the approaches that you want to use to address the problem, how you are going to do that, and then ultimately now, what are the findings of the research? That would be transdisciplinary practice in the truest sense of the word. And so the communication of science becomes important from the very onset of the work that we're trying to do, and not just at the end of it. But you will find, and that is definitely a flaw or a weakness of many traditionally trained scientists, is that is not usually taken into consideration. And I think nowhere have we seen the necessity and the importance of science communication then in the context or the example of the recent COVID-19 global pandemic, where we had the general public looking to science and scientists for answers, and scientists communicating new developments to the general public. And it became so important, you know, the framing of the words, the use of words could incite heightened panic in an already panic environment with so much uncertainty. And so you find the need to know how to do this effectively was really, really highlighted in the COVID-19 pandemic and how we approached it. So I want to now look at early career research opportunities in science communication, and again, reflecting on my journey and reflecting on my experiences. So for the purpose of this presentation, I will look at just 2 examples or 2 avenues for science communication that I have engaged with or had experience with. And I'd like to share what that was like. The first is through the conversation, and the second one is through FameLab. So I'll start with the conversation. The conversation is an independent source of news and views from the academic and research community, delivered direct to the public. And it is their mission and their mandate to effectively communicate science to people outside of the science community in a manner that is easy to understand, and in a manner that will also effectively illustrate the importance of the research that is being done. And I signed up for the conversation, or I signed in to be receiving the conversation daily midway through my PhD studies. So you get an article, or in your inbox you get a summary of articles. It's not just one, daily, around topical subjects that are affecting us on the continent, from the academic community, but in a very easily digestible manner. And I was quite interested and moved and also motivated by my PhD supervisor to put in an article or an opinion piece to the conversation towards the end of my PhD study, when I had a couple of findings already, was in the writing up stage, and I had already published some of those findings in an academic journal, which is the common pathway that we know in academia, and as we're trained in academia, the adage of publish or perish is one that we are well familiar with, but this is all within the context of an academic setting. But this was something that was really new and exciting to me. So there are various ways in which you can submit an article to the conversation. One of those, which is the route that I took, is to submit they call it a pitch. So pitch an idea to them based on your research that has been published. And it's very short, about say 300 words. And then they give you some pointers for how you can then frame that idea and consider things like, for example, the significance of that research, the timeliness of that research, in terms of how important it is to us in a time frame. Can you put that and say, this is urgent, this is a now issue? Or can you say, this is an issue that will be important to us, say maybe 5 to 10 years down the line? And then send it to them. And they have a team of experts who then sit and look at the issue that you're presenting, the importance of that issue. And then you work together with a team of experts in science communication, who would now reframe that idea into a article, which is now customized to be able to be sent out to the general public. And it is an iterative process of which you as the author are involved throughout the process until an article is finally arrived at. Another really great thing about conversation articles is that they are also published under the Creative Commons, which means that once it is published, other people have the opportunity to republish that work, maybe under a different name, but are able to republish that work on different platforms. And my experience with that was coming from, traditionally being trained in the sciences and, your familiar lingo and language, and then giving it to somebody else to then scrutinize it and then restructure it in a manner that sounds different, but is still the same thing. And one thing that they say, which I really appreciate, is that we are not simplifying the science, but we are simplifying the language that is used to communicate the science. So what I had was an article based on my research, which was framed under the broader context of food security, being simplified. I put it in the next slide. My PhD thesis title is The Text in Black at the Top. And this Zoom cursor is just, let me take it away, but it's Farming Systems Beyond 2020, a scenario-based study using systems analysis of connectivity between farming systems in the Vembe district, Limpopo, South Africa. And then I put this on the same slide beneath it, the actual conversation article that was published on the 20th of April, 2022. And the title, as you can see, is There's a Place for Big and Small Farms in Securing South Africa's Food Supply. And that comes a long way from the very chunky and very wordy framing at the top to the very simple and very easy to understand title at the bottom. And this was based on, as I mentioned earlier, published work, which had, very technical, scientific findings, but we took that and we reconstructed it into this article. And one of the really great things when I now follow this article from the time that it was published to the present day, because it was published under the Creative Commons, I saw that the same article was now republished so many times. When I Google my name under this article, I see it appear so many times. Sometimes it's newsletters, magazines that I've never even heard of in different interest areas, like say agricultural economics. And there's your article that's being, so in terms of the reach of this paper, it got a wider reach than what I would like to believe is the article, the source article, scientific article, which the article was based on. Another excellent thing about conversation articles is it gives the author an opportunity to engage with the audience and the readers. So you have an active chat platform where people can ask you, the author, direct questions related to the content of the articles and their views and their opinions, and you can give answers immediately in real time response to that. The articles are also, your people within your networks are able to share the article on other social media platforms like your X and your Facebooks, etc. So it got very wide traction and could not even possibly come close to the academic journal articles that I've published under my name. So that just goes to show how far and how valuable, how effective this science communication can be applied. Another thing I left out was through the same article also, the article now somehow ended up with SAFM, which is a South African-based radio station. And I was called for a radio interview to talk about this subject of my research and the findings from my research and how that is going to have some kind of effect on the general South African population. Reach which I doubt I would have ever been able to obtain if I just left it at a journal article, an open access journal article, which got published. So that is the conversation. And then I'll go back briefly now because my time is almost up to FameLab. So what FameLab is an international science communication and public speaking competition that promotes science and technology by creating a platform for young scientists to find their voices and reach public audiences. This one was really exciting. It's something that I also participated in during the course of my PhD. And so you have it applied at different institutions. And I signed up for it, and it's a competition, but there is training for the competition to equip you with the necessary skills in science communication for how you can present your scientific research in an exciting, interesting manner that would appeal to a general audience. And you are introduced to how you can incorporate all kinds of tools, all kinds of props, working with things that people are familiar with from their everyday lives to be able to communicate the message of what your scientific research is trying to show or trying to achieve. So the training for this competition was very, it was like about 3 days of training, but very intensive. And I remember just being completely wowed by how much more there is to explore if we are just willing to go beyond the confines of our traditional, science terminology and our traditional approaches to communicating our science, that it actually becomes something that is fun, something that is interesting, something that you would want to listen to, you would want to find out more about. And my experience with that competition at the time, I was based at Rhodes University here in South Africa. And I got up until, is there a microphone that is on at the moment?
We have muted.
Okay. Yes, my experience with this competition was that I was able to get up until the top 3 in the stages towards the competition for my institution here in South Africa. And that was really, I think, one of my also initial introductions to the value and the power of science communication. So that is really just the end of the presentation. I think to wrap up and to tie everything all together, I would encourage my fellow colleagues who also identify as being at an earlier stage in their academic career to really take into consideration and to be intentional and strategic about how you are communicating your science to the people who your science impacts, and exploring as many possible ways to do that in a manner that makes the people have a sense of this is about us, but it is with us. It is about us, but it is with us, and it is about us, and we get it or we understand it. Not just it is about us, but it's an us and them, or it is us and them. For as long as we have a mindset that looks at our research as that, I don't think we will go far. But we need to arrive at a place where we look at it as it is our collective problems, our collective solutions that we are coming up with for those problems. And a wonderful way in which that can be achieved is through science communication. So with that, I'd like to end there, and thank you very much for your time.
Let me come in, Dr. Fenji-Materechera-Mitochi. I hope I'm pronouncing that very well. And thank you very much, really. Yes, thank you very, very much for sharing your piece with us. I mean, it hits at home. I mean, what you have done with us, you were trying to paint that picture, starting from your own intellectual journey and then making some reflections on different aspects. So I'll try to go through what you share with us. I think there are 6 critical elements that you share with us, starting with the sustainability science. And then I think you were trying to conscientize us about different frames that goes with sustainability science. You touch on issues around those 4 important elements, which is the social ecological system, trying to demonstrate that kind of an interplay between society and ecological system. And then you are also helping us to understand the power dynamics that are there, these discursive practices that are there, and then how best can we navigate and then mediate access to resources. You touch on the 3rd framing, which is about issues around the nature, society, and interaction, which we should also take into consideration the different knowledge systems that are there, diverse cultures that are there, relationship with the environment, which is very crucial. And then the last part of your framing for your talk was around issues of a complex adaptive system, which is about the interaction and interplay of systems. Then you move to also give us a focus on your study about issues around governance, issues around complexity. On governance, you were also helping us to understand, to say, as a researcher, there are institutions, there are also structures, and there are many actors and issues of discursive practice or power relations are very important, and then we should be conscious of. And issues around the complexities in terms of how then do we give feedback, the loops across different scales, and cross scales dynamics that are there. You emphasize how it is important, if you are the researcher and a new researcher, that you should take note of transdisciplinarity, and then also making sure that you'll be engaging with fairness, and then also taking note of the actors in research. You were conscientizing us about issues around the co-creation of knowledge, the co-evaluation of whatever intellectual piece you produce, and then how dynamic and fluid and ever-changing pathways that will be painted that we should take note of. Then you move to the 3rd scale of your presentation, which is very crucial and very important in this sense, because you were also orientating us about the importance of contextualizing whatever research that we do, and then being very careful in terms of how not to promote the dominant discourses or the global North perspective, but also valorize and amplify our own context, which is very critical. How science and findings can also apply within our context. How can we use or apply knowledge to solve our own, or also reflect on our own realities. And then on your 4th stanza of your presentation, I think that's where then you came up very strong and powerful in the sense that you were trying to tell us about what is this science communication. Listening to you, then one understand to say this should be a skill. This is a skill that one needs to adopt as an early science career researcher. You said it's about sharing knowledge systems, and then as you share knowledge systems, you make sure that you share that with actors, you share that with the audience, you share that with the readership beyond the scope of academia. You were also trying to share with us and then conscientizing us about how best then can we strike a balance between how we share this knowledge that is produced in our research, and then how can we make sure that it is relevant. And then as we do that, we also need to balance the pendulum, not to give less of the details or too much of the information. But what is important is we need to try to avoid what we call it a confusion for the actors, or to, as we present the findings to whoever the actors are or a non-experts audience in the field. So in your science communication, then you were trying to tell us to say we need to calm down, and then make sure that we should not be intimidated as early career scientists, because you are amplifying around the issues of conversation, and then how it is important then the science communication. How can we make sure that our actors will understand whatever findings are? And then if we can do that, then we'll be in the position to make sure that the public will understand some of the obscure academic concepts, or some of the obscure or twisted kind of theories that are there, but will be put in that in a very simplified fashion. And the importance of the science communication is to trade and then move with caution, not to make sure to avoid the situation where we're just dumping down the kind of hard science to our actors. But as we present the findings, we make sure that we provide a kind of an enlightenment and empowerment between the science and also the actors or the public. So our understanding now of science communication is about, raising that kind of an excitement of scientific discovery and knowledge production that is there. I think then on your fifth stanza, as you were talking about this and then talking to early career scientists or researchers, you in your talk, you touch and then also try to sensitize us to say, how best can we be less intimidating in our approach? How can we be approachable? How can we also demonstrate that we understand and then bring novelty into the knowledge production? We should also be in the position to engage with ease with the actors or all participants, or people who are interested, or audience or readership, and then make sure that they understand and then they are not lost within what we call the scientific jargon. And for early career scientists, this will be for them to succeed. I think there are basic elements that are there. As much as we're reflecting on your own journey, but listening to what you're saying is saying, if we keep on reading, if we give feedback to our community, making sure that whatever knowledge that is produced is given back to those participants of the public, and then how do we present that? It should be presented in a very accessible fashion, and then as new career scientists, we should contribute in the knowledge space. And then how do you contribute in the knowledge space? By bringing new lenses in the creative perspective to society so that they can understand knowledge that is produced. As new career scientists, we should also be bringing new perspectives and then finding such, appropriate approaches in explaining whatever intellectual piece that we produce. We should find ways of how best then can we present this very complex, sophisticated scientific processes that we engage in, and then make sure that we also develop these new skills in a very unique and then practical way of how then do we present this knowledge, and then also how then do we write our intellectual pieces. So in summing up your talk, yes, you also touch under the science communication about the FAME lab, which is a lab that is dedicated for young scientists to find their voices. And then as I was listening to that, I tried to deduce to say there are certainly certain steps or stages or that we have to follow as early career researchers that are very critical. I think one of the things as I was listening to you is how best can we develop a kind of a passion and curiosity in the field of study that we're engaged in. And this is about discovery, it's about innovation, it's about, defining your own niche area to become an established researcher. And then as you do that, you need to make sure that you go through certain challenges and then opportunities that are there. Yes, as you were indicating your journey from your master's to your PhD, to say it's very important to lay that solid foundation in terms of your educational foundation, and then also work with others to rekindle your research skills, and then also gaining exposure in academia, making sure that you collaborate with other established researchers and then collaborate in other research projects. Another important thing for early career researchers is, defining the focus area, which is very important, and then finding the niche area, going through different sub-themes because you're emphasizing issues of transdisciplinary, and then how best can we identify those gaps in the body of knowledge so that we can be in the position to draw from the experienced researchers and those who are termed the mentors. And then another important factor that I also managed to also deduce from your presentation is about, trying to balance, that pendulum of the tripartite mission and vision of the universities, which is about teaching, which is about research, and then also community engagement. And then if we can do that as early career researchers, then we'll be in the position then to navigate that tenure of track to become very rigorous. I mean, to be in the position to expose ourselves as early career scientists to face the kind of a rigorous evaluation on our teaching, on our research, and then community service delivery, and then developing the kind of a strong research record is very important, because if you develop that, then you are like building up the research portfolio. And then just my last words on the reflections is how best then can we expand this kind of the horizon as early career researchers, we need to pursue what you call in your own words, the kind of a transdisciplinary collaboration or interdisciplinary collaboration with other researchers. And then as we grow in academia, then we will be in the position one day also to be in the position to generate the next generations of researchers. And then if we expose ourselves and then engage in public outreach and then policy advocacy, then we'll be, paving a path in different ways of, achieving and realizing our career goals. So thanks very much. I think we have learned so much to say success as early career researchers will always lies and the dedication and then also continuous learning, that kind of effective networking that we create. And then what is more important, I think, is how then do we build and then boost the kind of excitement and enthusiasm, and then also show commitment in whatever that we're doing in advancing the knowledge. And then lastly, the perseverance, and then also appropriate support. Dr. Fenzi, thank you very much. I'm going to pause here and then give back to Prof. Bonani to facilitate the question and answers. But thank you very much for such a very inciting and exciting a piece that will sharpen those early career researchers in navigating and finding their ways in the science communication. Thank you very much. Let me pause there. Prof. Bonani?
Yes, thank you so much, Prof. Nkwane. As usual, you can do the recap, Prof. So thanks, Dr. Fenji. Thank you so much. For me, somebody was saying, like any good song, you never tire to listen to it. You are such a great teacher, and I actually thought, oh, I wish I was younger. If I was younger, I would start the right way, and I would be far. But I'm hoping that you generated some questions or interesting insights to the academics that are here, and you motivated them, you coached them, and I'm looking at the platform to see if anyone would like to ask questions or comment. The floor is yours. Even if you are to tell us that you are inspired, please say so, because I'm definitely one of those that are encouraged, and I'm looking forward to ways in which we can, make this conversation a present in our campus conversations. I can see Dr. Mabandu, I would like to hear from you. I would like to hear some of the young scholars that are here. How do we do this? Because most of the time, we talk about we need to, but here we have been blessed with the conversations that shows how to do it, the how to. And so I'm going to pause and see if there's any of you wants to say something. Over to you, colleagues.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thanks, Prof. Sorry, I am using my phone, so I'm unable to use it to raise my hand. Please forgive me for that. Well, thanks very much. And I am sorry, I'm driving, so I just packed out of the road to listen to this, and I was unable to connect. I connected when Prof just was giving us the conclusions, but I'm so lucky that I had someone who made a very good recapping, so I was able to follow the presentation even though I was not really there. So thanks very much. I am happy that you touched the issues of the niche area, and that is something that as young scientists as we are, we get lost in the midst of trying to accumulate a lot of things, and we just go here and there without really focusing on what we want to grow ourselves as or into. So that issue is really important. It's something that personally I am trying to find my feet and say, this is who Rufuno wants to be, this is where Rufuno wants to go, which is very important as one wants to become an established researcher, would really need to navigate through those and just to find the niche and then take it from there. So thank you very much. And the issue of intimidating and being intimidated, we are being intimidated at some point, somewhere, somehow, and we also intimidate other people using whatever science, sharing whatever that we are sharing with other colleagues and stuff. So I would really appreciate if we can have a presentation so I can listen exactly what the speaker was speaking about. But I'm very happy that the narrator narrated the story very well. So I also felt like I was part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I think one of the good thing that Dr. Fenji did also is the way she is a storyteller, and the way she told her journey was relatable, particularly for many of us Black African academics. And the way how one should integrate the identity, the African identity in, because again, for me, the compelling contribution was when she showed how to, again, a lot of time we talk about we need to, but less of how to, Africanize, how to ask those difficult African questions. And I think that was compelling, at least for me. So I would like to see if there are more reactions and input on that. We talk about decolonizing methodologies, decolonizing our research, and she critiqued how we, for example, want to talk about science communication at the end and not throughout the journey. So I'm hoping that and the stanzas that Prof. Nkwani recapped, I hope you have captured them. Yes, we are going to, as usual, on request, we will share the recording because I do think that all the scholars, engaged scholars, could have listened to this presentation. I'm not seeing any hand.
I think.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Yes, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And Dr. Fenji, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and what you have learned out of those experiences. I think it certainly is a critical point, not just in terms of how do we perform or how do we live engaged scholarship. And I thank you for sharing that experience and sharing the stories of that. And importantly, sharing the learning and the implications, not just for your field, but also for how we go about with the business of education. So thank you for that. I want to take the opportunity while I have the mic to invite you to consider publishing this story with the Caribbean Educational Research Journal. I will put the link in there. I'd want to also take the opportunity to invite persons who are online to check out. We have a special issue call in ethics. I would also share that information with everyone in the chat. But Dr. Fenji, in my role as co-editor for the journal, I want to have a special invitation to you to publish this piece in our journal. So with that, I say thank you very much again and congratulations, and looking forward to the conversations as people have those questions about how do they go forward in this way. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Yes, Doctor. Of course, yes. You raised an important point, Dr. Bristol, about yes. It was not just about her area of focus or her field. It was about how do we live engaged scholarship? How do we walk the talk? In our respective focus areas, definitely. And I'm hoping that all of us on the platform had some food for thought. So those of you who can't raise hands because you're driving, it's after work and so forth, you can just step in if you'd like to say something before we end. We go towards the end of our session this evening. Yes, Prof. Dr. Bristol has posted the information on the chat. Please check the space, and the invitation is open to any of you to submit. Check the call and check if you may submit your intellectual piece. It's important that we begin to talk more about how we do things here, and we educate the rest of the world through journals of international stature like this one.
May I check in, Prof. Bonani?
Yes. I was going to come back to you, Dr. Fenji. If no one else needs to say something, you will be the person to give concluding remarks. I was just at the
No
point.
problem.
Yes, at the point of checking if there are comments and reactions on the chat as well. But yes, thank you so much. Over to you. We often do this where you do the final thoughts, concluding remarks, and we definitely would like for you to continue the great work that you do, also for mobilizing other young academics to look at the science this way. Over to you, Dr. Fenji.
Thank you very much once again, Prof. Bonani, also extending that gratitude to Prof. Nkoane, who gave an excellent overview and summary of my presentation, as well as to Dr. Bristol, amongst the coordinators. Just wanted to give a very brief response to the two interactions. So from Lufuno, who spoke first, and just mentioned about the issue of being intimidated and navigating, in just feeling intimidated by where to begin, the how of it, and finding your niche, finding your voice as you go along your journey. I think from my own experience, what has been important or central is just approaching the work with humility. I've been working with scientists for a couple of years now, and I find scientists to be amongst the most pompous and proud, researchers out there. But I find that when we take on this responsibility for engaged research with a humble attitude of we don't know it all, and there's valuable knowledge to be gained from other actors, and it is best if we are approaching it as a team effort. I think that yields the best results. So it's just something to take into consideration, our attitude towards the science that we conduct, and yes, our feelings around that. And then in response to Dr. Bristol's very kind invitation, I would 100% be delighted to make that contribution. So I've taken note of the link and also your email address and saved that, and I will be in contact with you. Thank you very much. And overall, just really to extend my gratitude, my sincere gratitude to every single person that has tuned in. On our end, it is evening. I'm really humbled by the numbers. I noticed there's also a commentary on the chat from Prudence Kutumera. It's also just very encouraging just to receive that sort of response. And I hope that we are collectively encouraged to keep pushing forward and to keep venturing to bridge the gap between the science that we do and the people who that science affects. Thank you very, very much.
With that, yes, thank you so much once more, Dr. Fenji, on behalf of all of us. Thank you so much to everyone who is still on the platform. Thank you very much to our colleagues across the sea. It's morning, and to us it's evening, and it's cold. We are experiencing a cold week. Until next week, I would like to encourage each and every one of us to keep shining, keep carrying the light, and keep sharing. Yes, I like your concluding remarks, Dr. Fenji. Last week, we also talked about, the scholarship of humility, because it's not something that we are wired when we are trained. We are trained to know everything and to come across as those who are in charge. And so there's no room to say, I don't know some of the things. So I think when we talk this way, we are reminding each other to go back to our roots. And with that, good evening. Until next week, all the best, stay blessed and stay productive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.